There are 5 keys for collaborative leadership that we've identified. There are more, but we're going to cover 5 keys today to create an emotionally resilient workplace. Okay, so the first one is about managing your own emotional trigger points. Yes, please note the crocodile teeth. When we get emotional, people can become pretty scary. And what we want to make sure we do is that anything that we bring, any triggers that we have as leaders, we're particularly conscious of. If you're going to create an environment which is safe, where people can trust that what they say is going to be heard, then the first thing we have to do is be able to be aware that sometimes when we get triggered, we actually undermine that safety. So what might that look like? It's tricky, you know. This is where you really need to be on your game in terms of acknowledging what it is that you are doing. So you might, for example, say something like, you might name the fact that you are triggered, in a sense. Look, I've got to say, I'm feeling disappointed that no one had replied to the email I sent out. You know, I just thought, what's happened to our team? I'm really trying to stay grounded at the moment. I'm actually feeling quite annoyed by what's happened, but it's hard. And I can see there are things I should have done earlier to perhaps refocus us all. You know, I do recognise I took my eye off the ball, and for that I'm really sorry. So just in that little example there, there's a willingness to acknowledge what you have brought into the situation, while at the same time naming the fact that you're finding it a challenge to do that. Now, some people would say, oh, that's weak. You shouldn't be showing that. But this is the counterintuitive thing. When you acknowledge that within yourself and you do it from a relatively grounded or wise place, it actually helps you become more grounded, and it helps bring safety to the other person or people listening to you. So it's a critical thing, perhaps the most critical emotion in managing your emotional trigger points. Okay, going back, acknowledge and validate. Without question, people's contributions, however they arrive, are really critical to acknowledge. So everyone's got something, everyone's got a perspective, and the way that it arrives in any situation might not be wrapped up in a way that is easy to hear. You know, sometimes they come wrapped up in strong emotion. People might be angry, they might be frustrated. Sometimes they don't arrive at all. There's just in body language you're seeing, and people kind of being very quiet, disengaged, perhaps frightened of the situation, whatever it is. So what we've got to try and do is be able to acknowledge and validate those contributions. Not necessarily the content of what's being said at all, but you're just looking at the person. You might say something like, yes. It's a good word to start with validation. Say that word, yes, even if you disagree. Yes. Totally, I get it. I can see and feel your frustration, Sally. It really does make sense. And I'm really glad you're able to say what's obviously hard to say. It sounds like you're really at the end of your tether. And it's definitely consistent with what I've been seeing generally over the last few weeks. Now, there's an example where you've helped that person in what they've said to know that it's okay. It's okay for them to be able to express a part of their humanity that perhaps is not normally acknowledged as okay. You know, we often tend in the workplace to put aside part of ourselves as if it's not valid. Every part of a person should be validated so that you can help a person to return to a wiser place themselves. So just as when you're managing your own emotional triggers, you return to a wiser place. When you acknowledge and validate somebody else, the same thing happens for them. They drop out of that reactive, triggered place into a wiser place, and they feel actually cared for, and they feel like they can be a contributor. Okay. Ensure your message is hearable. This is a really important one because sometimes we prioritize our message. That becomes the most important thing. And if we just prioritize our message and we're feeling frustrated, emotional in some way, all the people will feel is the emotion. They're not going to actually hear the content of what's being said, because people will themselves then get triggered by whatever it is you're saying. So one way you can help overcome that is by talking about just a few key things that, and talking in a few key ways that can help people get the message. So for the starters, you talk about what's happening for you. You know, it's your view on what's happening. It's your opinion. You're being specific about what it is, and you're giving a chance for that person to really get where you're coming from. Right now, if you start with you did this, you did that, I saw that, and you're again going to that outside, the world out there, as opposed to what was happening for you, it's harder for a person to hear. So stick with what is true for you. That is the most important thing. So you might say, look, I'll be honest, I'm finding it really challenging to do my job with so many people simply not turning up. And this specific thing you're talking about, people not turning up in this case, it's, you know, made up scenario, obviously, turning up to a meeting. Clearly there's something not right, and we need to hear what's going on for everyone to work out, from everyone to work our way through this. I want to say, though, that people not turning up and giving no reason is just not going to cut it in this team. I need people who are willing to put their shoulder to the wheel, take a bit of responsibility for what they've committed to. So let's work out why that's not happening. So you're helping people to understand the importance of responsibility. You're also talking about what you need as a team leader in that situation. But it's all coming from your perspective. It makes it easier to hear. Next one, listening to understand. You know, there's a lot of listening to respond that passes for good listening. To listen to understand is actually to listen to everything, not just the words that you're hearing. You're looking for anything, body language, the kind of whole vibe of what's going on in any situation. You can pick up those vibes. We just need to tune into them a little bit better and trust that we are feeling something that's not working for somebody. So one of the great things that you can do when you listen to understand, not just nodding, not just kind of really being present, although they're both very important things, but to help you to stay present to somebody who is trying to say something, and maybe it's a halting kind of, you know, engagement. You reflect back what you're hearing. You know, by reflecting back what you're hearing, you're really starting to help that person again feel like they're being heard. Okay, so let me just get this right. Here's another example. So I've heard that you're really finding the environment quite negative, and also that you kind of don't have a voice or feel like you aren't valued by people in the team. Now, is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure that I've got that correct, because that's what I'm hearing. It certainly makes sense. I can tell by the way you just, you know, sitting there that, you know, this has obviously affected you. Is that right? So just in that little, you know, offer to the person, you're saying, I've heard this. If that's right, you might say a bit more. In a sense, by doing that, often people will say more because they're feeling heard, they're feeling safe to share more, and you're getting more information. Now, you can't do anything. You can't find solutions unless you're actually getting to the cause of some of the things that are going on. Listening to understand will really get below the surface. Often people talk about some surface issue. It's actually got nothing to do with what's going on at a deeper level. So listen to understand first, and then see what you uncover. Just be with the person. Don't try to solve anything in that first instance. Jumpy slides. Okay, fifth one is being curious with good intention. Again, I guess just following on from the last one, our part of what's going on for us as leaders, we're trying to help our team. So often we are very quick to go to solutions. How can we sort this out? How can we solve what's going on? Really, again, thinking about, you're trying to create this environment where collaborative leaders kind of emerge. People at least will be in a collaborative frame of mind because of the environment that you're helping to create. Now, curiosity and having good intention is one of the key ways that you can help that to happen. Because when you're curious and you start asking questions, what happens is it actually empowers the people to start reflecting themselves. And when they start reflecting, they're the ones who start solving things. And they're the ones who are in the best position often, because they're the ones who are in the center of it. Your perspective, of course, valuable as it may be, is still one removed from that person. So being curious can help the other person to reflect, as I've said. So here's an example. Okay, so this is after someone turns up late and is sitting, just being on their phone, for example. Very common, of course. So welcome, Jake. Jake, are you there? Right. What's going on for you? I'm really keen to know, because you have arrived late, you pulled up your chair and you've gone straight to your phone though. And I'm just wondering what's going on. Are you okay? Now, because of that, it's true curiosity. You're not actually trying to put the person on the spot or shame them in any ways. That's what can sometimes be masquerading as curiosity. What the hell are you doing? This is really genuine. Why would that person be on their phone? If you come from the idea that, there's a generosity of spirit basically with what you're doing, then it helps, again, people to the better part of that person to come forward. And they might say, oh, look, this whole thing is just crap. They might actually be quite expressive and quite real about their experience. If they're jumping on the phone, they're often disengaged. They might be busy with some problem, whatever their reaction. But then you've got more information and you can deal with whatever that information is. You can ask them, wow, okay, so you've got something big going on at home, or, tell us a bit more about that, or are you okay? Do you want to stay here? Do you need to deal with that? This is all about acknowledging and valuing the human in front of you, as well as the person who is the worker. So this is really important, and this is what we've been talking about in these 5 keys, is what we talk about as maintenance. You need to be both in task and maintenance. If you just focus on the task as the priority, whatever it is you're doing, a strategic plan, getting some decision made, etc., without actually looking at how are the people in the room actually contributing? How present are they? What's going on for them? Unless you check that out, you might be having people who are kind of working at about 50% capacity, even less. So your task is going to be pretty hopeless anyway. Like the process, the quality of whatever you're trying to produce is not going to be there anyway. So to get a great outcome in terms of your task, you need to have people who are really, there, present, engaged. And sometimes the best thing for them to do is not to be there, as it turns out, because other stuff might be going on for them. So, they're just 5 of the keys that we've covered there. And this can be challenging stuff because you are really starting to use perhaps a skill set that you're not used to using. Because we're talking about people, we're talking about emotions, we're talking about self-awareness and reflection on what might be going on. But we're trying to do it with that care and that generosity of spirit. So in a little while, when you switch off from this webinar / Zoom meeting, what we want you to be able to do is actually take this into some practical forum. And so we want to leave you with a process, and this will be one of the takeaways. And that is the process that we call making agreements. Now, some of you will be doing this in one version or another. Some people talk about these as, ground rules, for example. Now, the thing about agreements versus ground rules is straight there in the name, you can see there's a whole different direction, a whole different priority. When we talk about team agreements, we are talking collectively as a team about what's going to work well as a group. And it might be in terms of the team going forward. It might be if you're just in a group, working with the group for an hour or two as a meeting, what's going to help this meeting go well. But it sets it sets off a great kind of culture for a short period of time or for a longer period of time, where people know how it's going to be and they get a chance to voice what's important to them. So let's go through the main things of this. Lost the other slides there. They vanished. The key things, if you're looking at agreements, the most important thing is that it's facilitated well. Really important. You've got to be able to work the room. You've got to encourage a good conversation to happen. It's much more important about the conversation that you create than what you capture in terms of those group norms, as they're also called. The other thing that's really important is you need to be scanning the room and making sure that you're seeing that everyone has the opportunity to contribute. When somebody makes a contribution, check it out with other people. So you're saying it'd be good if people didn't speak over the top. Is everyone okay with that? Right? So you're just checking it out. And often what will happen is people might say, yeah, well, what about the people who don't speak at all? What about them? What should we do there? I don't speak out much, blah, blah, blah. So, you kind of build it through the conversation. And as it goes on, this fundamental thing that's happening, which is so exciting, is you're creating a safer environment. And again, that's just that consistency. There's this sense of this is the way that we are going to operate, or this is the kind of group contract that we're forming right now is with best intention, we're going to work in a particular way. So you capture these things as you go through. You make sure that you've checked it out with everybody. You build on it. You create, a picture, however you want to do it. Keep talking. That's the most important thing until you have uncovered what's important for everyone. It's really about what are the needs of the people in the room. So we'll send you out a little PDF, as we said, on team agreements, and you'll be able to have an opportunity to run it yourself, give it a go. And there's quite a bit of detail there in terms of how you might do that. Where are we now? I've just jumped right out of that. Oh, it's exciting. Someone was trying to ring, you see, and then everything went blank. So we're up to any questions. We have a chat. You can ask questions there. We'll spend a bit of time looking at what those questions might be and see how we go. I hope I haven't dropped out too many times. I have no feedback. I've just been blaring the whole time. Let's see where we get to. I'm going to stop the sharing of this right now. I'm going to start the video. There's me. All right. What have we got happening? Have we got anything in the chat? I'm looking at the chat. Oh, right. There's a bit of hearing problems. I've just seen the chat for the first time, people. So here's one from Dan. For people who've never been in a team agreements meeting, how might you introduce the concept? Good question. Very good question, actually, because you're right. If there's not a culture there, you're wanting to try and help people understand why you would do it. And essentially, you're just saying, look, if we don't have team agreements, if we don't try and create some group norms, what do you think might happen? I would throw the question back to people. You'll find out very quickly what people's experience is. because what passes for a normal meeting is actually quite dysfunctional. People will say straight away, oh, yeah, well, there's often people who hold the limelight, they take over, our meetings run over time, et cetera, et cetera. So, straight away you'll have the information that people go, oh, okay, that's the point. Hopefully that makes sense. And please, if it doesn't, let me know. Just looking at, oh yeah, that's okay. So how about when no one responds when you mention agreements? Yes, good question, Jakara. So if no one responds when you mention agreements, say, that's interesting, no one's responding. I mean, name what you're seeing, If you don't actually name the obvious, there's a sense that the kind of the unconscious play can keep happening. So say, it's interesting, we talked about doing it. Well, I've just introduced the idea of doing agreements and no one has responded. I'm just wondering, is there anything going on for people? Have people done this before and maybe it hasn't worked or it's worked really well? Tell me. Always try and get some more out of your group, right? You are trying to remember that within a group, the wisdom is out there, a good principle to run by. Here's one from Claudia. What do you do when you have team members who prefer to work alone and don't want to share resources? Okay, it's a good question too. Again, go back to that, one of those keys, the curiosity one. You might sit down with that person and talk about that issue. Look, I've noticed you work alone quite well, and you've got a lot of work to do. Again, validate what you can see working well about them working individually, and then talk about the opportunities of what might happen if they get into a more collaborative space, and talk about, look, that wisdom that you've got there, it would be so great if you were able to share that in some way. Can you see any way that you might be able to do that? Yeah, that's one thing that you could do. I hope that makes sense, Claudia. Another one, Leonie. I've just come into a dysfunctional team and to try and increase the culture. Okay, how else can I get them to become involved? Good question. Yeah, well, I guess it depends on what the nature of the dysfunction is. But, I mean, the great thing you've got going for you, Leonie, is you're new. When you're new to a team, you're a clean skin. You can go into a team like that. You can start maybe by having some just one-on-ones with people, find out how they're going, find out what you're seeing in terms of the culture, and then have that meeting and name what you're seeing. If you're seeing dysfunctional behaviour, you don't say, I'm seeing a lot of dysfunctional behaviour. Name the behaviours that you're seeing, okay? So name that, people kind of seem to be, working by themselves a lot. Often I've noticed people come in the morning, they don't even say hello. And look, we are busy, that can happen. But also there just doesn't seem to be the sharing of resources. Whatever it is that you're seeing, name those things, because really you don't want to end up being the one who's fixing this. Go back to those principles. You are trying to create a collaborative leadership environment, a collaboration environment. You're trying to help the better part of people to come out. Some of the best work you will do is just being yourself, quite wise and caring, and going to the group and asking that question, what's going on? Because it doesn't seem to be working well. How are you feeling about it? Get the human part of them to open up. Rotating who chairs the meetings, very good idea. Really, that's a great skill to facilitate a meeting, chair it. That is a real art, and people need practice. So the more you practice, the better you become at it. So from that point of view, that is a good way of helping people to get to that first stage of even being willing. Because some people hold on to that chair very jealously. It's got a lot of power often associated with it, but you want to share power. So that's one thing you can do, is say, it's a skill. Let's try and all develop that skill. And people do things in different ways. Another one from Dan. Is it helpful to limit the number of elements in the agreement so they are memorable and focused? Yes, that's a good... It's a really good question. Sounds like you've had some experience with them being like, yes, too verbose, or there's just too much going on. Yep, I think you don't want to write down everything that's being said. Remember, the words up there on your agreement at the end, and you do this up there, meaning on a bit of butcher's paper, on a whiteboard, actually on a bit of butcher's paper, so that they can be there as a constant reminder every time you meet as a team. Really critical. And what the words that are up there are really just a reflection of the conversation. See, so if you don't capture all the detail, don't worry, because if you're trying to capture everything that people say, you won't be present to that conversation and being able to facilitate it well. Yes, you don't want long and forgettable, definitely. And remember, you can always go back to agreements. You can always say, look, I've just noticed we're doing a bit of, the punctuality is not great. What do you want to do about that? It feels like we need to just say something in our agreements. Right? You're not being some gatekeeper to behaviour here. You're just the one, in this case, noticing it. Have other people noticed it? Ask that question. One thing I didn't mention about group agreements, which is like really important, is always to mention something that you notice as being a particular pattern of behaviour that's not helpful. And one of those can be the use of mobile devices. They're so common now. They've become just this go-to for people. People will come into meetings, they'll be on them. It's kind of accepted practice. And, maybe in some situations they are okay. But if you're trying to do some deeper work with the group, they're definitely going to interfere with that. It's also good to ask people, what do you want to do with mobile devices? Again, to find out what the conversation is there, because you'll very quickly flush out people who might actually be using them for good purposes, different purposes than what you might think. So often our first thing is we see someone on a device and we think they're off somewhere, Facebook, who knows, but often they're taking notes. So if people have that opportunity to say, oh, look, I've got this, I need to take notes, is that okay? Then people are aware of what's going on in the group. So that's the most critical thing, that you've had a conversation and people are aware of the needs of others in a group. I think generally my experience is that people are amazingly forgiving of the needs of other people, but they're not when they don't know what those needs are. So if someone's checking their phone constantly, people just get annoyed. There's no context. But if they know, because someone said, look, I'm on call, or I've got a sick child at home, whatever it might be, there's context there. And they can be then forgiving and more present to what it is you're trying to do in that meeting. So, yes, agreements. They're a fascinating thing. You can spend quite a bit of time learning more and more about them the more you do them. I would really encourage you to just have a go at doing them, even if you think, and often I hear this, we don't have time for agreements, right? I think if you don't make time for agreements, you're going to lose time in your meeting, because you're going to strike some trouble because people are doing things that they wouldn't otherwise do if they'd had the chance to put some agreements together. They don't always have to be written. If you've only got an hour meeting, you might just quickly go around the room and say, what's important for people here for us to work well? That's the question you're asking all the time. What's going to help us work well together? There's somebody. Let me just see how we're going. Wow, look at all those people there. Okay. Where are we? Where have we gone? I'm going to go back to that. I'm looking for the chat. Any other questions? Oh, There's probably time for one more question, I think. What would we learn in the collaborative leadership course? Great question, Claudia. That wouldn't be a Dorothy Dix question, would it? Yes, look, we go into many things in the course which we can't go into today, but look, perhaps the most important thing that we cover is you having a go, you practicing this stuff. So we have 2 days for this course. The first part, the first day, there's a lot of input. We talk about things like the nature of collaborative leaders. What do we know about good leaders? We're harvesting the wisdom in the group there. We talk about the importance of principles, leadership principles. We do a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. So we will, because we're a group, we will put some agreements together at the beginning. We'll learn the power of that by actually being in the laboratory of the group itself. We talk about leadership styles, the different styles, different approaches that people have. One really important thing, if you're in that space of being a leader, is to be really okay with who you are and what you bring. There is no particular way of being as a leader. If you think you've got to act in a particular way, then you're already moving away from that authenticity, which is part of creating a safe space for people. When people know they're dealing with the real you, that's when they're more likely to open up. So yes, lots of practice. We talk about how you give a hearable message and you actually do it. We do lots of little scenarios. Some of them are role plays. Some of them, hopefully most of them, will come from the learning challenges that you have, that you bring along to that space. So that's it in a nutshell. Check it out, as I say, on our web page. There are some spaces left, and we look forward to seeing you come along. Is there anything else I've missed? I don't know. I don't think so. Thank you so much. As I mentioned at the beginning, there will be some takeaways from today. We'll be getting back to you with those, and please follow us up if you have any further questions. We're always happy to take questions from people. Where do we get a link to the information provided? Thanks, Leonie. We will send that out to you in the coming days. So yes, it'll either be a link that we'll send to you, or it'll arrive by email. Janelle has got that all sorted. Okay, thank you very much. Very kind of interesting environment not to have the feedback of the group. That's that's what I'm used to. So yes, I hope that was helpful, and I hope you can go away and start doing some work on agreements and using some of those five keys we spoke about. Oh, great. Yeah, a little bit of any feedback that you've got. There's someone, Kat Bailey, saying like the Zoom format too. That's great, because the webinar jam thing didn't work well for us. But still learning. And glad that it's worked. If it hasn't worked, if there's anything that hasn't worked, let us know. Oh, cute. Yes, more techniques about power sharing. Look, yes, please. Any comments, any things you would like to see, any things you'd like us to cover, please let us know. We'd be only too happy to set something up again. It's great to be able to support people in whatever way we can. And this has been great fun. So thanks a lot, everyone. And go well on your collaborative journeys together. Now, somehow, I'm going to have to do something. I don't know how it is. I know, I'll stop the video. Oh, there's a link there. Don't forget to click on the link. That is the course link if you want to find out more, so you don't have to go to the webpage. Thank you. Thanks very much, people. And thanks, Janelle. Thanks, Claudia. And have a great rest of the day. See you later.